Have we answered all the hard questions? Okay, so we're going to choose one group randomly to go first. And then, once they've presented their position, we're going to ask for another group to volunteer. We want to get two groups that have very different answers. So we'll choose the first one randomly, and then we'll ask which other group has a different or the opposite kind of answer. So we have variety.
지난다 다른 연구 잡라 담시 제저라디 당보 담시 제견저라디 견라 건조기 님에도 담긴스 안디 건조 담시 차외절 니버저라 니버디 아니 건조다 아니 레 만다 차슈 루가디 아니 페로체슬라긴스 라 디 건조 네 야나 독초이네 다 on the any yes.
Okay, and so we'll give the groups numbers so we can talk about groups. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, that ruga susu angidi hakosa jingni sumshi nga tus tangwoniba.
And one more thing, we would like to have you give some feedback to each group about their presentation. We're going to use the same format that you used for the neuroscience.
The tamshi chingye konzola ani konzola the tamshi kandes cheme dage susugi nyongcharjora di ani ruga shimbachugi nangro cheslan shue insra feedback di ani chedanjora chedandi khazan wangzi chengri gapsu chebana shinche ins.
So if you remember that form, it asks you to do two questions for the group that's presenting. Say something about their presentation you thought was very good, and a second suggestion for improvement.
저는 용샤디 마 집에 값소스 직디 니 담시 콘수 담시 지도 잠발라 수송원에 나와도 약부통에 직마 티로체스 안데네 니버디 디 야르게 땅고에 가르도 직 티로체스.
It would be very nice if I could hand you those forms right now, but we don't have the forms. So.
the kisi the cousin konsogi pomsho jipeju cheinsra di yobaina da yakuchung de di tanda pomsho di mes.
So for today I ask you just to make those notes in your own booklets, and then tomorrow when we have the form you can comment on the two groups that have gone to today.
저다 드리 pomsho mewa sunza susugi ani tepchung nanglola ani dinyi ma tiache ra ani sanyi ngazo pomsho di tradition di gal tie yungures.
Okay, any questions? Rock and roll. All right, now David has a random number generator on this computer. He is now going to tell it to generate a number randomly.
It is group 2.
So, you get to be first. Gentlemen, start your engines. I'll erase the board if you
I think they are going to use that diagram.
Yeah.
So do you need the whole group to talk or just?
No, just representatives. Perfect.
Okay. Two minutes to get those. No, that goes on. They can start now. So how do I translate? Simultaneously or?
Hello. Buddha. Ta sheba de la yawa nangchen na tena leba la tyongkhe da mu tyongki yawa ni dus tena songzang nga zu gi tanda sheba la tyongkhe de la sheba rakwa du zu sha yin sro sheba chashe
So in Buddhism there are two types of consciousness, those that are dependent on the physical substrate, the neural substrate, and those that are not or independent of the physical substrates.
Ta sheba leba la ma tyongki de sheba chashe du zu yin ba shi ta tanda sheba la tyongkhe de kan de tyogre la izana sheba raba shi sha jin she yu de yang wang xin ga du zu sheba ra shi che de ni yi ji sheba de la yang tanda ma shewa ta sheba chashe la de rakwa ra shi dang ko ran chamo re de le de so la tanda yang leba la de da ma de ba ni yu res.
So one type of consciousness that are dependent upon the brain are the five sensory consciousnesses, and the sixth consciousness, which is the mental consciousness, it also has different types, of which most of them rely or depend on brain, but there is a set of consciousness that are independent of the brain.
Tene da wang xin ga de de dang di nga su cha zang ha go de re da we ya do ne tene leba na la ju gu yo ba di chen ri ge bang da se wo shi ra yo re da ga na shi yi ji xe ba de la ya de gu yo ba di san yin ba yin na da nga su gom ye wi ka su la da gom ye wi ka su la leba la ju wa do dang di san chen ri ge zom shu pe mang go ra de so ge yang da xe ba yi ji xe ba di gi da leba la shu jin gan de dang di ya di san se wo cha de res.
It is clear that the five sensory consciousnesses are dependent upon the brain. For example, the vision, it's clear that there's a clear sort of mechanism of how vision is produced. Light hitting the object and then entering the eye, and being captured by the photoreceptors and all the signals and so on. So the way the five sensations are produced is quite well understood in science, and there is clear dependence on the brain and its parts. As for mental consciousness, there are also many studies, looking at the effect of meditation on brain, where certain type of meditations are directly sort of connected with different parts of the brains.
Tene danda gom gen ni la de kan se wa na nang chu na gom la sa xin je yi ji xe ba ma do wang bu nga gi gom ge yo ma re se ro tanda song zang danda gom ge gi nyang le che cha zang yi ji xe ba gi nyang le che wa de du go res tene danda nga so ge xe ba cha she de le ba la de go ma re se ya de gi de sang bang da di sang danda tu dang nyam shi che che ra de gi jum se chik di cha go res.
The reason why we chose meditative state as the type of mental consciousness or consciousness that depends on brain is in Buddhism, all the meditation or the consciousness connected with meditation are all mental. Sensory consciousnesses are not connected with meditative states. So scientific research has shown this, a direct correlation between these meditation and brain areas and activities. But the type of consciousness that we think are independent of brain and neural activity are what we call the most subtle consciousness. And one of the times when the most subtle consciousness manifests is during tuktam.
Tanda diga nembe je gya wa na tanda sheba thak she de nga so gi ta nang chen ne shewa ne chewa nga ma ne shema do dang che ro de ya she go de da song za leba chewa shema do ma ra sti gi jun de continuity de che shema do ya de nga so gi da sheba thak she de do de ge she go res.
And this most subtle consciousness is also directly or responsible for the the most subtle consciousness is, directly responsible for the continuation of mind into the, next life. So the existence of previous and future life is, based on the movement of this most subtle consciousness. So it is the most subtle consciousness that keeps the continuity with regards to the flow of the consciousness. So it's clear that after death, brain ceases its activities and so on. Yet this most subtle consciousness continues.
단단 가서 야 세단지라 단지 강래 얘기 돼요. 가서 강래 용화들에 내가 레벨이 다 내법으로 질라서 레벨 내벌라 때네 되니 용화디 셰위 값소 가서기 간세원 되니까 ngōchik dus leba yine yang dini niga gi thumo gi juchik yores di kaisena ju kono la tegu res dini ju kono gla jwa dosona dini nyala shujin tegu re dele dini nyala shujin tesona ju kono la ya shujin tegu yo mares.
So in this diagram the consciousness represented by M is supervenient to the neural activity. But we think that both of these are, correlates of a previous, a set of consciousness that motivates this. So therefore, there is this dependency upon the antecedent, consciousness. So therefore, when something is changed to the, antecedent consciousness, it could affect both the consciousness and the neural substrates, but changing the neural substrates, need not affect the antecedent consciousness.
So just to be clear, so it's not the case that the diagram is just kind of moving out to the left and there's another mental and another brain, but there's something else on the diagram that somehow is explaining both of them. Is that right?
Quran la nyongwa di ma do nyongwa Quran to sa gi ani wangza gi di jik shagi wes causal motivation ine di motivation Quran to sa gi ani wangza gi di jik shagi imbes re yan di Quran gi to sa gi thanda wangza gi di me ba chine din de wes okay
딩 넘비드스견나 가르스데 먼저 꿀롱지도 꿀롱라 땐니 아니 자와들은 주고 여러서 시야데 먼저 디야 꿀롱데야 주진지를 땡거 요하게 남자데 먼저 켈랭거 여러라 이네 땡야데 뒤년비 땡당 나시 땡바 니데 땡저데라 땡땡바 주주 주진데다 나 시바니보데 아니 땡땡바 주주데라 뒤년비 땡바 찍당 나시 땡바 니도스라 ता कुलों दे जुगजन लते हैं सेदी खोरा ता लबी छासी कारों चिगला तंग योबादी दुनिया में तेंबादी चे यानी दी चीज जुगजन लते हैं बादी गुंडे की तेंबादी
so they also, they maintain that this causal motivation has its neural substrates, right? But the dependency here is the causal dependency. In the case the causal motivation and this consciousness, it's the causal dependency. But this motivation has its own neural substrates where the dependency is kind of simultaneous.
It's a neural substrate, so it's more brain.
Yeah. So he was saying that this causal motivation would have its neural substrates that it depends upon.
Okay. So just to be clear, why would it not just be that you've started this diagram at a time and there were parallels going back in time leading up to M1?
So
there was M sub 0 and M sub -1 and M sub on back.
So that tanda dijora di karsore M0 che ra M0 che entana shin di leba di ngola ya de la leba chik chine yongdan di dusrbe ya di karsore M di M sub 0 Yes. Chungire chungma resta. Kaje yongdan jura dine chikta shebe gi gyun do ji yone de shebe gyun yob nyamdu wol lebe gi ene chawe gyun de yobache ende rebe yan di loga res.
단다 디 말했어요. 단다 주의 공로들 차라니셔로. 다 차와 셔와이나 토만 고주 사딩 어서 지왕가만이 출리위 거 토마 셔바지 마도 레바게 제리아요 말했어요. 드니 다 간다셔는 마셔 천대기 토말레야디 셔발리기레. 드니 셔바 레사이 슈글 말레라. 드니 간사진 레베기 샤와지양 고주의 거 단다 디 자고 레그라. 드나로 담보 남시 슈 레바 코랑 마두니라. 토마다 난셔나로 토마델 셔바레 타마델 셔바도 간이스나 지왕가만이 셔만 중해디 셔바디 임바 송장 토마델다로 천대기 다 셔와이나 토마델 셔바레 하마지와 신도의 것을요.
Although this may be seen as an M sub naught, but if we trace back, we would reach a point where we have just a causal motivation that starts everything, and that causal motivation came from the previous life, right?
Okay.
And then the final moment is also seen as a moment of consciousness which is completely independent of the neural substrates.
Could you give me that again?
So, we start our life with a causal motivation and end with another consciousness, yeah.
Right, so something special happens between lives where there's a kind of a singularity, right, which is neither a brain nor an ordinary mental state, but somehow causes both of those.
Yes.
Carry over from the subconsciousness.
Okay.
단다 디간라 세시지 쉬와이나로 당가서 낭취션의 세와이나 제준이 대야요레스로 제준지디 시비 제준 대고라 당가서 조슈게서도 시비 제준들 제고레스 단다가 세리비시아 레바다 데서 시야딩 가서 제준디 파미 코탄 얘기요 빨라 파마 매워 가서 이울루션기 대단시요 디당 낭취기 대단디 시비 제준레 되니니라 제바 첨보요레 쉬와이로
So in Buddhism, because of the law of causality, everything must trace back. So the physical substrates can be traced back to eternity. Mental substrates or mental phenomena can also be traced back. So there will come a point where the continuity of the consciousness, that singularity, that moment of consciousness that is completely independent of the physical substrate. Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
단다 디
One special.
다들 세시고질 단다 디 나로로 콘조기 고마다 rumba 고마다 오마슬라 온디 남시 디강나 체 아니 디 죽진디 남자 다시바디 와라 체다 강게 삼로지 끼온디 간조 당하셔게나 객도라 세바지 끼온디 세바디 파체가 도디 죽정이 네버고 안자지글 응은전 체하시도라 디 네버들 간조 속반나로라데 공조니도 총스라 간조기 다 고알렌단 찍 체와이나 간조 고단 체와이나 다 덴덴데 덴니 네버디 찍랑체 가르시디간라 강게 왕 덴데게 삼바키와 지요라 세바키와 지요라 깨글라서 볼라 세바키와디 코랑 가르레샤스니 마타비 네버블 제가 두디 아니 거기에 라비 아니 네 셔다바지기 왕세 교와지 녀야 될라 아니 거카스디 세바디 케샤세 세바키 마케세디 왕세 네버치는 응은지 지야디 코란티 로스 믹스기 치야메어디 셰저직 디 총소라 셰저 셴바디 강데 아니 와게 아니 왕세 네버치기 교알 제발 때네 아니 강게 아니 삼로디 퉁고 요레세야기 나시 엔트리치 덴데게 간저 삼선로 니총소라
Okay, and as they try to understand this model, they came up with two interpretations. One, this mental moment, right? The instance of having this attachment for the cake. When we look for it, when we try to understand what that experience is, then we look at the brain and saw these neural activities, and because of this neural activity, we have this experience. So the two sort of occurs simultaneously. The other interpretation is something happened to the brain which caused this experience. So there is a causal sort of relationship between the neural activity and the consciousness or that attachment. So
one is causal, the other is correlational?
the other is simultaneous, synchronous,
Or is
where the experience is identified as this neural.
it's not that there's two things happening at the same time, it's that they are the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to one causing the other. Yeah, okay.
Tene ta ngazo ta nangbe ta chone ta tadubji gana sheondi gana tadudi khajode seutongro ta dinigi nane thara chewe na khonjo thabe nebabdi matsega dudi dutengi wangsak namjadi nambadi shegido ta di nangbe jone shewe na shiba da zugjengi thara ge wand chewe na shiba de hajan trawa da zugje de hajan rakwa chichade yores ta wana ane nganzo labe nangi gyoa nganzo ge samloji ki ondi dedan tunyam de labe nangi gyoa ji nyigi doa se digala tende ge labe zugjen de ta ane shiba nibo de tendami dewa yores 다 땡땡이 대화들 당기 쉬어 나지리 균형기 땡땡이 대화 직다 나시 땡땡이 대화 니더라 다 균형기 땡땡이 대화 이나 코란게 아니 10에 네법라 삼로 가리나 야가 도지 끼용디 대 코란 땡땡바 투사기 땡 죽전 될라야 10발은 요 체점도 뒤서기 땡 죽전은 요한도 요레세라 땡 죽전은 요 체점도 뒤서기 아니 다 10발라 안 땡바 10발라는 요한도 요레스
So, in terms of the dependency, in Buddhism, there could be two ways in which one phenomenon could depend on another. One is, as I mentioned earlier, the causal dependency, and the other one is what is the dependent and the how do you call it, the object that it depends upon, right? So you have two things, basis, okay? So the dependent and the basis, right? So in this case, the consciousness is the Shebadi thinking, okay, so the consciousness is the dependent, and the brain or the neural substrate is the base, right? And because of this dependency, when one is affected, the other one is affected, right? Other one is influenced and changed. So therefore, because of this dependency, right? When neural substrate gets changed, then the experience also gets changed, and vice versa.
Yeah. The latter sounds like the way we're thinking about it. It's kind of co-constituted. So when I guess an analogy would be water, the properties of water being frozen or liquid, for instance, and molecules, right? So when the molecules reach a certain point, the water is frozen. There's not two things happening. It's not molecules and then the freezing. It's frozen water is the molecules at a certain state. So something like that is dependence you're talking about?
Gelagi the basic tone tanda kyangi tendemba shebada di lebani tendemba indandi basic tone samlo tangba ina tata digidu medu chik sungro ches pena chuyorwa chuda ani chui keje pena ko kyakwa ro chu kyaya jorwa the chu kyakwa chaya dikhareslana chu dudu korangi nebab chik gi ngol rodu ani kyakwa chala gurwas 저잔디 카르소레 인데기 두두다 아니 추이 캬과니디 카가케 체요 말와 코로 두두디기 아니 딘데 카르소레 고바디 숭와점기 아니 디 캬과디로 와스 저잔디나 신신에 아니 단다디 셰바다 아니 레바니 텐데마디 딘데르베스 kanzu
del rigni yon chodora ngo thada bi ten ten ba chik da ngo chi bi ten ten ba ngo chi bi ten ten ba se de tanda thagaran re manzu tape cha cha na ani ningji shu chen bu gombe na labe nang cha lang yo chi ro yo de manzu ta ta chi gyuni ha ku tu gu yo ba ine ta tanda konjo gin de se ta konda bi de se gya da na je che ina ani ta shiba de ngazo samlu khore da ningji kia di khora ningji de ngor ki ni gom goya jiro ngor ki ningji lo di khora ani zugjang gi neba plan deshe gya gor kain sidi pgi ni ngazo ga ani labin nan gugi ra gi tel ngonje chi gyor ina ya khoni ten den ba re se la on di kan la chig lan gyo an ro top gi jamba tel gyo an ro pe sha sha na ngaran so kanza di kande shagor se kanza gi dagji phombo la ten ni ani kanza se ne pha shagor ma to dagji phombo lo lo so kanza se ne chen ni gi me ji ro tin na ji namshi se te kar se de kan la rani kan la ten bi ten ba zugjen tel la tenni shagu yor isro tadi shagu yoba ina da tanda kar sangazo ten zugjen lan gyon ro ngazo thong yorwa ta di gani khonzo ge zugjen resen de shi ina ti ta kande se gyumsen mando adi kande ha ko ursi di kan la ko tele ani karsa ta te na tu nyambi gyoa chik ngen zamba chama to ti khora namshi yimba ge gyumsen ro min do se
So the way they are positing this dependency, right, the dependent and the basis. The consciousness or the experience is the dependent, and neural substrate the base. And we many research studies have shown that contemplative practices like compassion can change the brain, right? When we engage in practices like compassion, right, it's not a visualization. We are actually, inducing that experience, right? That compassion itself, and as such, because of that, the brain is affected. The brain is changed, right? So this kind of dependency, indicates that the neural activity itself is not compassion, but right, an experience that affects, an experience that affects the neural correlates.
So they went downward causation.
Yes. Tindi inza namshi de ta zugche de ni cha ina namshi de khazu ma tsegan ro ina zugche nye se di namya yo mares.
So therefore, they would that the namshi tsene zugche ni mares.
Namshi de ngenze chi kapsa tawa de la zugche ne bol chi la namya le yo mares.
So when we seek, when we search and try to understand what that consciousness is, that experience is, they maintain that we could never find a neural activity that we could say is that consciousness, is that experience.
Di mayo jumse ga yin sana sro sheba khorang gi zomshi jora di suje mares pena duthen daw yin atom lan ko zomshi kare na tanda di phodo da mani do lai jora di so gi zomba re la ra ta sheba di ge de duthen gi zomba yin na ko chega ne na ta duthen de la te ne lai jora yin ya sheba di ngaso nangshe ne sena ko sume do sha ro chezang ko gi zomshi ji bi du mewa sonza ko di ga ne ne la ga mares yin yang de so den dewa chadang ga yin se wa yin ro 코라라 땡땡변대와 예상 수진도 스테다거래 디지고 레바지고 말이 가서 셔바 니지 공원도 수고 차장을 수진 태고래 되네 수고 디서 차장 레바렐라 가서 라고 말한 조와다 뒤냠도 줘대고라 수고기 차시 차장나로 단도 민제다 그래서 차장 려고 하래 돼 차장 가서 레바렐라고 말아 단 레베 차신 조하면 수고 차장은 좋아 줘래 간이스네 땡땡 바이에서 대삼지 고 디렐라에 저라 디랍투 말렐라
So the understanding is that the consciousness, right, this moment of consciousness, they are not constituted by particles. They are not constituted by subatomic particles. Like unlike a molecule, if there is a molecule, we can say that it is constituted by atoms or subatomic particles, and then we go look for it and find it, right? So the consciousness is not like that. It is not constituted by material substance, right? Of course, there is this dependency, and as such, when when we engage in the practice, right, it could affect the brain because of this dependency, but then the change doesn't occur just simply in the brain, but also throughout the body, right?
So is this true of just that point, just before birth, when there's no brain yet, Or is this going throughout life that this kind of subtle consciousness is always there? So is this a continuous thing, or is it special to that moment of transfer?
就是在谈到这了开始的셰바디기 아니 술을 뜨고 말했어요 저라 수전을 뜨고 말했어요 디 아니 통매 내급수 라 그냥 당기 당보지기 요레슬라브라 디 내급수 깡깡르베 야나 디 균도디 아니 베 미즈강자도 균디 요레스 간제 수전라 마töng에기 아니 셰베기 균지로와 디 다통매 닝점조에 급수 샤바나 신신에 디 아니 마시기 바도 고 균디 요레스
다다다 가서 요
现了马对比西北军老了
다다 얘도 사실 추가 단진 가서 수제 마对来的레바라 마对来죠
네.
디게 제 세고레스 시당 다다 가서 수제 라라 마도 세바기 셴바집이 롱来줘라 델레 템바디 시사레스로 디니니 코니 오지라 가서 디 다디 다담에 바로 디 템와 시사레 단다 천리기 시당 전에 레바라 때 라와 인상 레바라 마정에 줘라 세바 차셔 줘라 데 레바 되고요 말에 코나기 제준 요라 뒤준도 가서기 계제시 계속 가서 공원도 주토고 말아 디게 준도 수도데 거레스 세바 차셔데 디땡 거예요 말에 다시 단단 가서 난주 계제시에 대해 마치와 왕봉아데 체 세바 라바도 소마도 표시 당투고 말에 학과도 니코이 가서야 세바 참모를 해들 세바 차셔도 공원도 주토고 말아 그래서 다 난주 될 때되게 차대 말레스
is so the dependency they are thinking about the brain, right? So there is a time when life has started, but the brain has not yet formed, right? So at that time there is a consciousness and experience, but those moment, doesn't depend on. It doesn't have a neural substrate, right? So independent of that. But the continuity or continuum of that consciousness, exists, but in a different form, right? So right now, although the continuity is there, but it has manifested in a more coarse form that is, that has these neural substrates, right?
Okay.
So can I go back to one little antecedent point, which was that compassion changes the brain, which I'm all in favor of. But what I would have supposed there might be two kinds of things you might think of. And one is where, say, you engage in compassion meditation. Well, obviously, when you're engaging in compassion meditation, you got all those neurons firing, and what fires together wires together, and so it increases the tendency to exhibit that state of the brain that realizes consciousness. Realizes compassion. And then the others, not in meditation, but sometimes you find yourself being compassionate and you're not meditating, you just see and are compassionate. Again, if you do that a lot, what fires together wires together, you change the neural substrate. But neither of those require that the compassion isn't itself realized in the neural substrate. Does that make sense?
Neither of those. In neither of those cases, what did you say?
Neither of
the
those
compassion.
cases, you need the compassion to not be realized in a neural substrate at time, whatever, that then carries over to changes in the brain at time one. So I just wonder about why think that isn't. Why think that the change is brought about by mental activity that isn't brain activity? Why not think that the change is brought about by mental activity realized in brain activity, where the brain activity produces changes in the brain?
단지의 검기 페이지 패션지 송버와 안디나로라 답변아 닝지 검바이나스 단 닝지 검단딜라 리그니도 오치네 직딜라 챙아 수수기 단 닝지 검네로와 디 검연디 잠발라다 닝지 검베 규림 나로라 코 카르소레 가주 레발라 유와도 주로디고 와스 디임바순자 레베기 차시 나로네 아니 가기네 제여기 차시 디나로라 코 다동레 찌기르 와스 왕자타수 제가 당기 슈바나 시체네 아니 왕자타수 다냠동 징에도주 아니 가서 투가 냠조르 치기레스 숭반나 신체네 디 네겁수다 아주 니지 곰바다 냠도 레벨을 차와 메바 마임바치네 차와코 로디기어라스 제가 디 차와 딜라 띠네 라 아니 레벨을 주어줘야디 라 레벨을 주어 용야 고란 딘디기 차와 딜라 띠네 용야 지도와스 셴바디다 닝지 챙아 마곰나야 양 아주 뒤뒤수 딘데 닝지게 딘데 용거와스 라 닝지게 온딘데디야 야네 양도 딜라코 디버체바이나 라야 다가나시 투가지 용거와 진짜 디 용두와 아니 파게라 유어드레지라 레벨을 유어드레디 라 아니 니지 고다 니지 곰 딘디기 네겁수 레벨 코란라 차와체바 디기 아니 유어드와레스 지네 말라와체 아니 셰바 디기 아니 코 레벨딜라 유어땅바레스라니 디 라고구르베스 다 칸제 디 유어드레디 니지 곰연데 잠을 레벨을 차와 요라 차와 딜라데네니 유어두그레스나 라투마르베스
단다 제나 닌제 단다디 주와 드레쳐라 닌제 마고나 주와 용고 말아 닌제 고네 주와 용고라 제선자 단다 디긴 주와데다 닌제 니 땡땡이 바세워 차서 게데 닌제 마고나 단제기 닌제 단 대여기 주와데 레그면도 제상 고 유나 메 닌제 곰나 용 닌제 마고나 모요와 선자 단제기 주와데 닌제 왕기 바데 세워 투레스
So the neural changes that is associated with this practice of compassion happens when the person engages in compassion practice, and it doesn't happen when the person or anyone doesn't engage in the practice. So this sort of indicates that that the change is produced by the practice of compassion.
어떠셔나 다 드세셔 사세 건다 건다.
Okay.
하샤라 좀데.
So they're done with their presentation.
So we'll have another group come up, and then we'll have a discussion for everybody. Yeah.
Ale ter ruga shembadi ayun tamshe narona ani DJ la ngazu chedu chigins.
Okay. Thank you. That was really good. So now we want to have a group that has a different kind of view, a different answer to this question present. Which group has a very different answer? Who do I want to get some debate going here.
Da kyanzu ruga nalone lemada konzuda menda thashwe len slagoreda. On the chigi apero ches. Kyanzu imbe. Okay, group 6, 3, 4, 5, group 5.
I have a coin to flip. Yeah, 5, sure, 5. Yeah.
That is declared to be group 5.
Yeah, group 5.
Just for their record keeping, 5.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3,
So
4,
please
5.
write down for group 2, who did, I thought, a fantastic job. Something you thought was good about their presentation and a suggestion for improvement. So some feedback for them. And we'll have you all turn this in tomorrow.
So you want to give them a few minutes to do that? Or?
Yes. And you can put
Okay.
your thoughts here.
Kama kashi stegi esra ruga da khuni tamshe khuni nigi karsore legbe cha kardo aniya yarge tango ya lagore samja kharina di ma thiro ches. Kama kashi chi thuju phugin es.
No. Their position, yeah. Yeah. Right, and I think the question is, do they really need that? I think they do, in the sense there has to be something like, they need some evidence that something like that happens. That you have a purely, well, maybe not. I mean, it depends on how.
I'm going There's interesting studies in biological political science that have to do with the correlation of more conservative, socially conservative positions with fear and disgust responses that are broader than the responses actually say spider pictures.
Yes, right.
And it turns out that Swedish and other studies that involve tracking of adopted children show there's a heritable or biological plausible that it is heritable with respect to the tendencies of the amygdala, that is brain activity, disgust responses are similar. Why not read that as
independent.
Go back to the point if you start that you have some sort of tendencies.
Okay, I think they're probably done.
Okay. Number 2.
Okay, so this is group 5.
They're working.
Yes, exactly.
I don't think it's too realistic. It's
Yeah, I guess. But given the kind of grading it's going on, it doesn't matter.
Kuni di pato.
Okay. Oh, we wait for Rick.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Hola, sobat semuanya.
Ini cina aja.
This thing on. No.
Hello.
Hello.
Kod stu.
맞아. 그룹 보이나? 아니, 시바시 개발라.
You're destined not to.
Di beje jiga di. Yeah.
당어 저 그룹도.
Ngaba.
구름가 봐라. 아니. 시바 지 딱지는 들어와대 다가는 되는도. 들어와대 니 딱지 시바데 아니 레파나 컨디션 저 차그레시. 단저 요래요 말이지. 그래도 티티나니 니 들어와 코란데 데스 자치무시부시래도 시바 남자다게 강을 고수 상하나시 시바레리 몽베시오레 대직 사업로 당고도 되네요. 시바 요자 참말을 레파고르고 말이지. 대양 사업로 당해 지그래도 대양 사업로 직당고도.
So this question is very broad. There are, as the previous group mentioned, there are many types of consciousness. So therefore, we have to think about all instances of consciousnesses, and also think about whether all of those types of consciousnesses are related to brain or not.
아니 지금이 달렌파 아니 렌자와 세군으로 다티 저희 갑리나요. 상로 당초름 봤으면 건 당고야니 착도 상고. 남비타도 찍버거니 달렌 칸데 치어레세 직체. 아연 선자 체릭다다 체리랑 거니 달렌 칸데 치어레. 양나 군이 성제체도 뭐데 성제체 달렌 칸데 치어레세.
So we think that there are 3 ways in which we can address this question. One strictly from the Buddhist philosophical point of view, and then another strictly from neuroscience point of view, and then third, a combination, some kind of combination of the two.
다 남베 아니 다르 치고 가니 사블로 당나 아니
Then the groups are on doing a shiba de Robert Summer Lepale and Taku Chiche. Nene, just Samalaya, Shiba Pena, one she read Summer Lepanteo Yamase, and Eji Shiba Rabba de Yore, Yo Jimselia, Gomjana Lepan and Joan to say, Jensen Chitango. Taina Tisum Masumul Chitomutusiro, Gomjani Lepale Yanjo to a tail, and Eji Shiba Rabba de Lepale to a she to Gona. Tam Gomjani also data yard into the Tagan Coche yard into Mambo Jore, and Shiba Sama and also 20 let to get a say at Ovata. I didn't dig in I'm shutting also killing Tomatis.
Can't we Namshe Washingadi?
Not saying that Shiba de la Palatuate is a Nambita to Shia Conchena, Shiba la Palatuate killing a mess.
Okay. So they, strictly from a Buddhist perspective, they accept that the consciousness does not depend on brain and neural activities.
Penata and then Nambe Chena, Ishita Wanshi, Wanshinga Dina, Wanshinga Chonrupshi Kablea, Tambo Koraya, Jendo was in that Jusum. Jusum the Sons on Wanshiti, Chongora. That Jusum Ganalea, that Zijenji, Zido de Wambotre, Penamishito Pejana, Wambot, Mugi Wambot. The Mugi Wambote, Tangazu Shonling Mambojita, then Mugi Wambo Wanziches, Chapsete, Koyorisonde, Mugi Nala Yosevitan, Dodan. Ani tenju mambo shina deyor. Tading aso lapana ya tsigona kaboshi bujire. Teonde ani tatmoma da jenda ani mujin che. Ani temata jesum sansana tagaran tini ani wanshi jegre ma to te yosamba lapa shina de ta go mudese.
So if we look at the 5 sensations, sense consciousnesses, taking the example of vision, in many Buddhist scriptures, 3 factors are said to be necessary for vision to be produced, right? And of those 3 factors, one that is physical is the what is called eye sense power, and the location of that eye sense power is identified as within the eyeballs, right? So strictly speaking, from the Buddhist perspective, the physical factor upon which this vision is dependent upon is just located within the eyeball, and as such, there is no mention of connection with the brain or the relation with the brain.
Dini tachi nesertum jone tango wansa mala mixin do ena ti and ta receptor korang ti suge ta neser ti ya len thama de ya te wansa mala le ya le korang gin de shen de chijam ne thami ta shun de chong de shini shi su ge le se shi to ti wansa ser gin de shi jap tang de che ane ta ngara de chona khare yor se ne ti ge shi su ge la le se kap ji ka ja de shong de nombe shong lik shen na yi shi je sam de cha do du ma de te wang shi de te nge ne che sa gwa de.
So when these 3 factors they come together, then vision is produced.
What are the other 2? We have the eye sense power and then
eye sense power. One is the objective factor, which is the object, external object, and then the third is what is called the immediately preceding condition, right? So which is a previous moment of consciousness.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an expectation of the thing out there and when it doesn't.
I don't think they understood that as an expectation, but a previous moment of consciousness that enables the vision to arise. So when these 3 come together, then vision is produced. On the other hand, in neuroscience, of course, we have this the mechanism of how vision is produced, where light from the object comes and hits the retina, and the signal is sent to the brain, and then we have this perception of the object. And he said, he feels that when the perception is produced, sensation must the perception that we experience is at the mental level. It's a mental consciousness, not a sensation. So sensation must precede that, right? So the way the neuroscience is describing perception, it seems to him that they are, talking about mental consciousness rather than a sensation.
Okay.
아니 계속도 그런 게 배식잖아. 그죠? 배는 가서 다들 강바디 나래야. 다 나지 요나테 답변하네. 무시대 바차샤나스. 다 무시디게 아니 출로근 지종 일종즈데 무견듯이 무견요가 차샤 출론지종. 다 무시디게 지종의 통야를 가르고레선티 바로 왕보세야 돼. 동화다지. 다 그게 아니 다지 아니 기콘도 어때서 짱마시와체로. 다 출연 지종 장만 지종 약보 쉬우지와체 안에 왕본 장차 쉬어네 다 가르고레세야 돼. 다 가르고레스네 테마 타지세 고레스. 테마 타지 고레스용데 단단디 에디 시바데 고이 강에 이를 바카 조칭게 빼나가서 미시기나 니나데 안에 출로라 예종이 기콘타사요나 소소 단돈도 오시. porque cachoeira de mena tonto gumara o tendo o kinsambashi telia tema ta kinse o te kachiti
So to understand the three factors, he is going to use an analogy where we have the external world, the beautiful scenery outside. So that's the objective factor. And then we have these windows with clean, transparent glasses. And that would be the sense power. And even if those two factors are there, if the person who is within is unwilling to, look outside, then, he will not see the scenery. Likewise, right? We need something that directs, right? Attends to the scenery, and that which allows it to attend is the third factor.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
어 티니도 단다데 왕시 제단 그런 바시로 다 예지 시바체는 이버다 데 제섬데 이버 창고에 이바요 마르와 다 예나 카운터 아니 코 아니 타치 아니 이제 왕보듯이 이제 왕보라 뚜그레데 이제 왕보 등이 버식 챙고아요 말봐 티온데 다코 아니 제니다 섬 가리는 그레데 징이 버섬 상이고 이바요 말레스로 아니
For the mental consciousness, three factors are not necessary. There could be three factors that produce mental consciousness, but there are occasions when only two factors can produce mental consciousness.
다 안에 돈다 로데 수드나 아주 대시 가르게 오르세나 단다디 에네 남비 따르브 가니 같이 셔도나 대소야 레발란 저와 따고야 베카포두스 저와 다가시 나 초도 디니 마 아니 대시 좀나 지첸 참모실레도 코 아니 같이 셔나 코나 시바 코나 게 앵오직 베식차 참모직 같이 그러와 대 코나 아니 페나 직 유라 유이 찬네 콜레 롱세야당 윤즘 베찬네 시바제야 딘디시레 마도 콜레야 군이 차코라 치야면요 데 딘디 강레야 라파랭가 순데 타토고메티스
So therefore, from the sutra, according to the sutra view, it's really hard to make this connection between consciousness and the brain. On the other hand, in the tantric teachings, they talk about the dependence upon the consciousness depending upon what they call wind or some kind of subtle particle or energy. And even in that, the mind or the consciousness and the wind or the subtle particle, they are of one nature. So based on the specific function that it does, we identify an entity as the wind or the subtle particle, and the same entity, because based on its function, can be identified as consciousness. So one sort of phenomenon, because of its because of its oscillation or motion or movement, it's identified as this wind or the subtle particle, and because of its conscious, capability, it's identified as consciousness. But it's one item or one phenomena.
Guccio Chawanto, Chichani, Longdang, and Zumbi Chawasi, Chawanto Ni, Jelimanda, Ni Ganico,
Zumbi.
And Zumba says, Kuyer Savas, what the Nishmato, you want.
So the movement or the motion is understood as the consciousness sort of jumping from one to another object. So because of this motion or this movement, it's identified as wind or the subtle particle. And because of its clarity in terms of objects appearing to it, it's identified as consciousness.
I have a small question. So often in traditions, long, old traditions, certain ways of putting things get use analogies or models, language that is kind of points to something to be understood, and so it would seem to me plausible that the relevant text, in using the notion of a wind, pointed to something to be understood. And one could wonder, what would be the principal basis for thinking of understanding it in terms of, something other than the flow of activity in a neural net? In other words, it's not like back in the day they said, oh, this is the wind, and not the activity in a complex neural net, because they didn't think about neural nets. So why not understand both subtle particles and wind as mental models that turn out to be true insofar as they're understood in terms of neural activity?
The Ganlagi Tuadi, the Rikshon Ningba, Roal, the Lomangbugi, the Karsul Lugu, Rikshon to Zunanglo Las, and the Pedan Jarne, Roa, and Tunda Koya, the day any Mangu Yungu res. Chazada Tanda de la any Karsureta, Lung Seneda, the Dutamos Echora, the any Yoe Chane. Jugbe chane ani ngunzin chigi yoba sonza da ko yobe chane lungslani ani sungu yonas rwa ani ta dindigi yowas ta ani gugyogi ani thunda di rwa thanda nga zu wangza gi chawa chedan di nanglo la ani yungu yorwas kazna da tong re che da ko chigi ni gyugya gi ani number ji yungu yorwas chezan da di karsure di imbasunza da yowadan guje di rwa ani thandang azu wangza senri gi teshe gyawe ani gyuwa seneda rwa di gane ani karsure kowal lena di negapsu rwa ta ko dinde geje ji shewa rwas rwa gyuwa dan dinde ge shewa re kasa di negapsu wangza gi dodan di ta ko sebu yo marwas ta ine thande negapsu da wangza dodan da guje di yoba Rwangazu Shebegi Nyongwala and Dindigi Gujuji Dantewa Yobati Shingi Yoza and di Tone and Azugi Tanda Lungdan to Zuteshana Digmarbes.
Tangarangtas and Garantas is Yamaduta Tadruki Chishachin Kachishena, that's the Kapon Series Amkira. And then Nambi Tadruk Tambo Ale Kurashibasi, Korangunzi on the Kanijin on the Ani Sergirik Basi, Senida Tabdeo Shasharwa, Salva Tarik Basi. Tadiakale, Salva said in Wanzin Karchi or the Salva said the Shiberangende, 시비 기차카레세 살바세 배니 살보세 장 배당마시레세 다 당마 원지 제당래야 제당 마르 마보나니 이 주니요 봐 대 당만 원지 제당 직체 다디 니바데 가르세는 그거 제리도 원지 제 그 제리 가르치르세데 유르치 중거래 리그레세 한도 디니시 단 통거래세 한도 딘디 니 강네 시바데 원지 제카시오래
So in Buddhism, consciousness is defined as a phenomenon that is clear and that has that is knowing, right? So consciousness is defined as that which is clear and knowing. So the first part, the clarity aspect, indicates the nature of consciousness, and the second aspect indicates the main function, the primary function of consciousness. So, seva di ani.
seva di 원지 지용데 seva del이야. 지당 원지 제다 마보는 게 다케다 치셔도 신는다. 대세 잡당 주니요레스. 니 대세 가르저 직대 사와 연당 간데레 송데 코로나 상마 장장 변나 치 유르생에 가리네 잡아가 요 말다 콜레샤그레스 한듯이 변나 아주 멜론나 신식 그 멜론나라 그런 거 멜론을 유르래야 유르생에 간디시나 멜론나 샤용한다 오시 그 유르 간디시나 시발은 샤그레스 대세 잡당 직대레
And the way this clarity is understood is the nature of consciousness is such that any object, right, irrespective of its structure, shape, nature, can appear to the consciousness. That consciousness can sort of have. The consciousness is completely undefiled, untainted, so to speak, so that any object can appear to it.
다 니바데 컨데레스용데 코네 짱마 짱짱레 페타마레세 돈다치 카르코레세나 페나가서 페나 직 렌도이네나 쇼도 짱마 짱짱시나 코 강레야 리모도 카르트냐 코 나초바시 강터 코페 당아서 가르치 니모도 세난다 가르소소도 지요레세 티코 짱마 임바 가르치나 콜레야다 가르 장든데 제요레세 티강니데 시치겨워
and an analogy that is used for that is a very clear and clean mirror, right, to which any object can appear. The second way of understanding clarity is it being very flexible, very malleable, right? Just like a clean paper on which you can add any color, and then the color it takes the color, or it's very malleable, that it can wrap around any object and sort of know that.
어때 딘디 인데시 장원이다 네마 아니 시바 참이네 거울로 손에 참마의 베기 참이 강로 손에 랑시 참마데 직바데 참마래 용거레스 다이나 시바 라벤 남샤서 가르세 되게 시바 원지 니바의 제리세 시도 제리 강네 레온데 다 제리 제당 강네 되네 맞아 나속바시 다 제리 양에다 시바 양에세 다나 센당 센중에 남샤 참마데 아니 르크바세 제리 강네 되네 도샤 그레스
but it also has this second characteristic of knowing, which is its primary function, and based on that, based on the type of sort of activity or function it engages in, all these causal form of consciousnesses arise, right? So at the primary sort of level, it's just this purity, this clear phenomenon that can take any object as its object, but as it engages into more different functions and activities, then causal form of consciousness is said to arise.
다데테 온디 단다게 송아데 다게 원세 세르크 직 단당아서 원세 나리야 다지 movement che tang da ku so le ya yo yo mar se chi to ta ngarang ge ta se na khap ti rang de le ya ko na tes ta ta ji yong sa mar se ngarang ge ta se ri ro.
So coming back to your question, I personally feel it's really not easy, not convenient to understand the motion and the flow as the motion of signals through through neurons, through the synapses and so on.
Because those are, in some sense, always already defiled.
The any yunzen that the kelema to yunzen the any tanda wanza tasugi ba da datan da yuechura the any Quran tubzam yine defiled lana da ko timaje dende yimbe reverse.
Tadi chik tadi kharsorta ane pege ane tatrap ke nal ma ane karso nyamlem ke shu nel ma de kawle nga su chalong thile da di namja ka chi shigro to zon bed ka chamu shu gang ka chi shigro tanda nga su ne namji wansa ng tong tini shi rang le ya ane de meres ti on de to so me zena tanda wansa ge to so tangarang ita serda ti zin rabin nam shang ri kan thong de wo re ti on de ta yang number su di na le yong ke ma bu yore ku zo yang gong se yo na
the reason why I'm claiming that is partly because this involves, molecules and particles and so on, which are seen as a coarse form of, motion and particle, whereas the subtle particle that we talk about, which is the kind of the basis of consciousness, is at a very lower level, at a very most subtle level.
Tanda chidang gengi tis sewu song song tangi digang tis nambe dawu chik shue che na.
Yes.
Chidang nganso nangbe shung nanglo la sheba se di chidang wangxie tang yixie se tang tokpa tang tome se re tang ta pek mangbo shugu chi xie yorwa. Ta yina yang ta chiki ngarangi samsul dawu cheba yina sheba se re di chik leba khonal tene kewa ma yinpa chirwa. Leba le tes loks chik shagu waso dawu chik. Pena ngarang so lebe jawa tin so kaa dhruwa yina yang tanda shebe jawa je degi yoba. Pena ngarang so nangpe shungni dhub shayaki kewa nga chi tang le gyumre tang. Ta digi ya chiki lebe jawa kaa tsawe je la yang ko jawa je di yungu yorwa. Tinsan tinso ya chik leba le shuk chenpo rang tugi mei sares.
So the way consciousness is categorized, there are different ways of categorizing sensation and mental, conceptual and non-conceptual, and so on. So different ways of sort of categorizing consciousness. The way I understand, right, consciousness at a more subtle level is independent of the brain, and there are moments when the brain is not yet formed, and we can posit consciousness, and also when we think about the concept of reincarnation, where consciousness moves from one life to another, clearly there are moments when consciousness is not dependent upon brain or neural substrates.
Lakbar tanda sanga ki shung kashi nanglo lerwa. Chi ngarang zo sem sai chiro, sem kam ki ten thoma chasa dawdi. Ninga dawle chagidwa. Lepa la mai bache. Da na shingi shi jowe ani tuzu dilayang ani ngarang zo chik sem di zo ninga la di chegi yo bache. Ninga ne thon rogo yo bache rwa. Da na shingi ani sem kam ki tem di yang. Ani ninga ki zalung dawo chile shani ani zalung thamu tang lung sem tang dewe to ne inga ne thon rogo yo ba ko shegi do.
And in the area of Buddhism from where this concept of subtle particle or subtle wind comes is the Tantra. And in Tantra, when a consciousness enters the body at the time of conception, right, it's said that it enters where the heart is located, or where the heart is located, and at the time of death, when the consciousness leaves the body, the heart is identified as the area from which the consciousness leaves the body. So, prominence has been given to heart more than to the brain.
dan wamba zui nanglo la chiki mi shidu zambala koran zuki droi pedang jiro droi pedang di rimba kashi ji song yore
droi pedang di
so ki sa chu me lung za droi se giro droi pedang di la rimba kashi ji song yore ta chi dangaran zuki ya peche gi shi nangbe shung shi song ji she gu zambala kashi gi ya digba top shi mo sa yo na droi di gi me ne ma don droi chi 개와 숙천부지 사회는 조회되게 또니 톤도교에 베다 직디네기 림바까지 송요레스.
In the Abhidharma text, there is another sort of phenomenon associated with the process of death, where the heat or the energy, how the heat or energy of the body is dissolved in certain states. The process of the dissolution of the heat takes place. So there's a clear mention of in certain type of situation, this heat dissolution happens from the top of the body down.
Tine sanga gishung kashe nanglo la tanda nganzo di shegidwa semkam giten dila nyingda uche di nanglo ne jik za dila mise gyan sumda uche gidwa za kyang ma che roma che uma da uche za kyang me nanglo la zo garse na kuwa digi sigirda ngana zo kuwa digi zo ani za kyang me nanglo dogo yuwa che tak digi zo ani za roma sigirwa di nanglo che lung digi zo ani za uma nanglo ne dus dogo yuwa che songi dus ta dinzo gi zo gar dogo slaba ina jik lepa lates matin bata uchik lepa le lokso ani shepa sai chago ba yobata uchik thonang de uchik legi dos.
Yeah. And earlier when we were talking about the Tantra and the transference of consciousness happening at the heart location, the area so the area where heart is identified has what they call 3 channels, through which different kinds of things flow, right? So there is one central channel, and then one on the right and one to the left. And in the central channel, it's said that the wind or the subtle particle sort of flows, and the other 2, one is for one is for one type of the regenerative sort of energy or regenerative fluid, right? When conception happens, you need 2 types of regenerative fluids, right? One is what they call the semen, and the other one the red sort of essence, the white essence and the red essence. So through one channel, the okay, so in the right channel flows the white sort of essence, and the left it's the red essence, but in the central channel is for the wind or the subtle particle. So although there is a kind of an elaborate description of physiology with respect to how these subtle consciousness arise and so on, there is no connection to the brain, right? So there is no mention about brain. So therefore, they think that that brain may not be the neural substrate or substrate for
yes, they will
yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
Good. We're running a little long. They should kind of try and tie things together.
that can to chokdom nangro ches.
다가랑 아니로와 아니 찍네 다기원래 아니 찍점시 단다 아니 배나 다 세리는 레바면서 소샤만 보시와 어디 솔래 맞추는 답시 아니 시바 여기에 된 거다 저양 시바를 두고 그래서나 레바를 두고 그래서나 요메
So another reason why they feel the consciousness is not related or brain is not necessary for consciousness to arise is there are many organisms that don't have brain, but in Buddhism they are, considered as organisms with consciousness or mind.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Good. All right, I think the first thing to do is to open up the floor to their challenges and questions to the two groups. So we'll
Do
just,
we arrange ourselves in any way, or is this fine?
I think this is fine. We'll just do it in class. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Really interesting, both presentations. Now I want to open the floor to you to challenge or ask questions. David and I asked some clarificatory questions, but now it's for your time to debate these two groups. Yes,
So,
and it seems to me we have two opposing views, right? One view says there is no necessary relation to the brain.
So-
The other says yes, there is a relation to the brain for at least a lot of kinds of consciousness, maybe not the one kind sometimes, right?
Okay. 지금 다 된다가죠. 뒤쪽이 아니 can주기로 왔던데 루가니기 담시에 나로와 고란주기 담자를 송으로 와딜라 아니 지와유네다 저바유네다디 나야기 뒤쪽인스.
Okay.
So how do you want? So one person can ask question and then the other. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a group
지금 다
thing.
can주 지와 영예 쪽이 차장 아니 지와디 술레 임바디 땅 로아는 건조기 랭경으로 와.
근데 뒤에 쉬셔가지. 단지 루가니고 단다 디치송소. 아니 단다 다왕시 시바들 니치소로 시바들다 왕시다 이신이친 다왕시 되게 아니 지단다 레버랑에 띵기레스 지내 송소라 단다 게트림도 딜리다 지단 렌트에 뛰어서로 지단 단다 디 렌스나 단다 게임 공자 송소 다 댄스지로 다 bên level 댄스에 가지고 단다 왕시거나 게임을 하셔고 마도지 딜리 심바 댄스고 말아 레벨 되어요 말아 디나 순고 말아 디인도 뭐 고저 댄스에 가래 거 댄스고래 지금 말세 레벨이 단다 왕시지지 게임도 지고래지 제번에 게임을 나눠 디스마시에 준제 가르치는 시에면 책디 되어지라 단다 게임도 단다 디스송소 시바다 지난 단다 시바 코랑 디시지는 뭐 단다 세바세리 아치랑 딜린 넘버로 주는 세바세들이 ngosewas 좀 봐. 아니 그 토리 다쟁이 변벌에 되어 있자 ngosewas 단직지 아니 지레서 와서 콜 가리나 차를 무시니 그 지레서 와서지다 아니 단을 딜이야 시세와서지 다 시세와서 좀 봐. 아니 딘데기 다 시바디 아니 가르쳐 버다 다 이게 다 ngosewas 다 지레서 와서 다 시세와서 대단 찍도록 다딩가 단달라 카드 데마스 단다디 시바디 단다 세바세지 어디를 단다 세당디 딜레지를 쉬어있어.
Okay, so he has a question for the group two, where they said that there is this. There are different types of consciousness. Sense consciousness are dependent. They, agree that it depends on the neural activity. So his question is, in Buddhism, when factors are identified for sensations, only three have been identified, right? One of which is the eye sense power, and if that's the case, and if the sensation is dependent upon the neural activity and so on, then can we consider them as one of the factors? And if so, then why hasn't the scriptures identified that as a factor?
일단 네 저 담보지와 아주 전승이 가르치세요. 단이
lapsa zo de gela chan ko ni chada ra aso len jasa de ta ji digana chensum she wa mar chensum she na kar nan di lapate dakshin ngo ji em de gar ji jo re jo chang do re jimji chang do re jimji ge ten ten bin jo ji ra yina khoni kar re ni kup chi ga ne ki wa tanga zo kechi ga ramba jin ta jira kechi ni na ne ki wa kechi ngap shi na zu na chi ga na ji na jimji chang ni jira khoni 고름 이 첸스 라 키샤니 첸스 미샤 고요 단 더샤 디가나 계직 담보라 니와니 바로다 딱시지 디가나 니마 가신 거 거라 나 치토 가신 거 거라 다이 가르레 치토 치케나 나 유조도 니 급치라 유조자자 딘지 진이더니 갑치 바자 로가임 바지셰 딘지 진이다 첸스 마셰 첸스 고창
세워 참
다 첸스 가르치 셰와 말즈나 첸스 셰와라 짐지 셰고레 짐지 셰나 납시 셰고레 디냐마 많이 마셰 고요 다 단다는 너니 가르치 셰저레 가서 럭구이건 뜻이니 디냐마 니급치라 양나 치토치다 양나 니마치다 올라지라 양나 다시치 저름고나라 니차 요아데라 갑치라 자르자가레다 예 첸스 그 럼바데 데스 저요 뭐요 말
예 카르스 상마 고마서라 니 디와 카도 땅 바이나로 땅안 계란주 가르sun 거 원래나 아니 왕시디 아니 가래 레벨 땡기도 숨에 저러다 땡기도 있다 이로 땡기도 있다 이로 되나 트라니 세기도 다 왕시 땡기도 있어 왕시 땡기 요원나서 다 왕시 레벨에 그 땡치고라 땡치바이나 거 계지기 주라고 섬당 거를 해서 다 계지기 주 섬당이나 대지에서 나오니 그 시기 말아서 때 가지니다 디 땡단에 가래 해서 거다
세그레 젠스는 나는 샤나 국가를 쳐도래 덕신 쳐도래 저 왕시라 자르자가나 덕신 쳐도래 다이 gempa zoko ko sonsonga tondo ngaso lapana paran rodi gangla yishila jarnan jikindu usi ti parola yara muka go doksu chini ti parone angshi jara ta penyang ju chosonga na o tenji jarnan jikindu ta tamarto rakwa ji shana lapa yara ta chama go chigji teni shiwa chiate angshi chini ta tenji jina ko lu
ta ke tende ma tanga diga no be sikyan chigla chachira tende ba la di jamba jila ko lenga do mare shiba de tensa zugje ni tenda de nga de kubja gang de do kubja de da ngani tenda ba yore te tunyom de tenda ba de ta tunyom tenda ba de ta gana re da kubja de lemba nga la salma dabguro kese kubja de gana sofa de tis tubu yo na nga gana dos ma tis ne yungro ta nga zume chi ba nga gana de kuma ne ge tseri ge takje ji thong de ya de di sofa de gujo je yo ta ma ne go yo de thong yo re tende inza jan chimbi de wa saba de res ne nganje chevere ta ngesena de soba di jan chimbi mare de jan chimbi tel te yo yenza temba jan chimbi la tem zujen de la ne temba jan chimbi ne yo te gujo jabe topji temba kubja de la yo ndo re di thong re se gorta tina se ucha se ta temba la de kandar tinyambi kubja dangan gi temba ta udire.
So basically they are saying that there is this dependency, but it's not a causal dependency, and as such, we need not identify them as factor because the three factors are the causal factors.
Okay. Okay. Nice textual subtlety. Yeah.
Los tiwa nibati tiwa da nge tiwa se ucha masun da sewe tyon khares la re.
mana de tiwani tagingi gengi sewadir ni sumso
ale shimaji yore
odi nebada odi
tiwa marwa
tiwa mare shi sawala de chidang ko rangshi time leba mewa inza ni ko shi sawa seji chile sawa shi sawa ngo sawa se ta se shi ripasi gora the sewa se de odi da de shi javes.
Okay, so he shares a comment or remark for the group 5 when they talk about the clarity as one of the aspects of consciousness. There are three ways in which we can understand clarity. One from the functionality, one from its nature, and one from its shi sewa, chele sewa ni, from its identity.
아니 니도 아직 되죠. 단단히 괜찮은 변소 해 봐. 알아.
나디 단데 메스. 딩이 저거들 컨니발은 여러분. 다단계 컨니발 가성스는 아니 시와라바디 단데 남시딜라 아니 타라니 치네 남시라바디 가스나 레벨 땡게레스. 다 남시라바디 레벨 땡당데 셰온디 가스 데칼라 아주 곰게비니 코데 딜 아니 두제온디 가스나 레벨 조와티가 도사다 쿠즈 데 디시티 자고도 tadi bayna ani kese ani namshi thamu do zonga zuta ni level mat yumsen di karen tila panta ro tini ke yona mena sa chi ta tani yang chi di karsna danda gi di gom jawa tini level juwa do chi ba te nga chen ni kar thung do siti kala chi shuki level ani ka sa gom jawi shuki na tini level juwa do chi ti siti kala ka siti kala level juwa do ya di ka siti gom jabi jibu do chan ti ti siti kala ani danda gi di tem tem ba ta jo level pa teng sa jo hotel ndi se kan ni jawanas.
So his question is for the group 2, who earlier stated that there is dependency, right? But it's the coarser form of consciousness that are dependent upon the brain, but not the subtle form. So the question is, are there any evidence supporting your claim that the subtle consciousness does not depend on the brain, one? And second, to clarify the dependency, they talked about contemplative practices and how that impacts the brain. So to me, it seems that it's the consciousness that is producing that change in the brain. So the dependency is the other way around, where the brain or neural activity is dependent upon the consciousness.
Consciousness, right? Yeah, I remember these guys wanted to flip it over.
Laso di pejanga samsujina dini doji saritanda. Maso nemsi chamot so de lepala tengu mari se ajorwa. Tadi chidanga zo da tadubgi ko di samnatani de shawarma de jendanga zo da takje chine tini pangda keche thumarwa. Tile sambalanga zo tadum nalola pina sumegi namshada tini mamboji shedawai sunga tse ani lepala tendang ji yathu marwa. Nini tandanga zo gi tudam da tindi gi gom thamala ne bine kapso lepi gi chawang kana e tanda ko zubu la ni no pa song dingi gi ta tindi chigyo sare sene jete ora. So changmadi ti gi nemsi thamod so de lepala temogo ya gi pangda to thure samsara uchre sharwa. Ani tanda ibade kare.
Regarding the first question about evidence, of course there haven't been any scientific study done on subtle consciousness and how it is impacting the brain, so we don't have those evidence. But philosophically speaking, we talk about these these different realms, right? Formless realms where it's just pure consciousness. And if in the scriptures those are mentioned, and if we accept those, then it's clear that there are certain consciousness that are independent of a brain, and also in the states like tukdam and meditation that are that go really deep, where this dependency is not seen, as is the case of tukdam. So philosophically speaking, we can think of cases where subtle consciousness is independent of this neural substrate.
Tning tanda kasa tuani badra tangi ngaso tes panzo konor temero samsara chidora tangaso ki kari tozu kodro chonsala imbaina ta shiba rakpa changmalo ani karsore lepala tengu resene tinirang mewache shiba rakpa nanglo laya ani karsore lepala tengu ngi chita magungi tingi sha chugudu serwa pinangaso tangi gomlo pi jar gabla ani gom maje ngolya karsore ta ngachogi tangi gipunso sona chine lepa langyurwa laya kurma chingi gi ani shiba jago chigire samsara ujre sha sang somak tini jukurdonjo telanga so karlo orsena nangchonala la gi kulonsen lebgorwa titilo pa yore chengi chawaina yore chengi shiba imbaina ko yula pan jibre chengi gi ngela ta tijkure shiba jkure tela gi kulonche tik lepa la tamugongi tiche tigi kunni lola teni ani ngos pege ta diwa imbaina karina nyong ngo kiwa tichi ta tida nyamdu lepa la gyura drugi yobade ani ta 체력이 방당한 소리 땡겨와 뒤에도 잠발 가서 무슨 휴면매와 매도 잠발 딘디기 갑기 녀와데다 레피기 주라니 보데 펜스 땡땡바 임바데 다 가서 그래 다랑 가서 킬렘바 임바이나 킬렘고 치기래다 디긴도 잠발 코니 딱까지 자그래 삼사라오지.
So there may be a slight confusion in the way the people are understanding the presentation. Of course, the coarser form of consciousness, they, many of them are dependent upon the neural activity. And as we talked about, as we earlier talked about, the causal motivation is really important because it is this causal motivation that directs, right, consciousness to engage in, any activity that engages in. So in a contemplative practice like compassion, right, we have this causal motivation that directs the consciousness to engage in a certain form of practice, and it's science is showing that there is change happening within the brain because of that practice. So because of this evidence, we have to accept that there is this the relationship that the brain, we see brain activity when we engage in certain contemplative practices. So this evidence sort of is a clear indication that the two are related.
이래가 네베 추스잖아. 단지 가서 곰라야 곰 차사 말단도 투당 드솔에 셴베 난중 가서 ninjo 곰야당 완셔와 드소디 셰바라고 차고래. 다 간이스나 근데 급 셰바 탐몽원도 지야 급 시사로 치위네 급시라 치린 다 타마 지제 드니 가서 리만 냠버 조이 급 지제 드니 니 급세 다가나 아치라 급 급시로. 그래서 실리 셴바 곰게 냐네 차상디 가서 곰게 급 셰바라빠디 원도 주요거네 고곰 제거라. 제산 디기 인상 가서 셰바라빠디 리라
So this dependency is seen in most of the experience that we have, right? Of course, there are certain moments during which the most subtle consciousness is said to manifest. So other than those, almost all the experiences that we have are, the manifestation of this causal form of consciousness.
당가서 우스근 톤 대상발다 남비종의 샤에나 아니 고친 지연심대 청용 대상발은 통그래서 걸어와 답변나 원즈미시 따올라 차저가나 아니 무진 공부도 요지 대단히 아니 뭐가 공부도 주메야지 다네 아니 테마도 진대요 대상발로 고 아니 원즈미시 지용 걸어와 다대 차송에나 대 라발란저면은 아주 통술라준 따올라 아니 준슈르니 강서대양 대다요니 원즈미히라서 과제를 탄로가 말베스 대다원 아주티 단단히 덕진 거라 다티 능거즈진 당바데 언니 코랑 뭐 도도 코랑 라자가이나 가서티 문성 그 준다서 가서 조봉제 거라 다티 간다서 제게인스 마베조니.
So this question is for group 5, which earlier talked about the 3 factors of sensation. So for a vision that perceives blue, right, something blue is the external factor, objective factor, and then you have the I sense power, and then the immediately preceding sort of consciousness, right? So you mentioned that when the 3 factors are together, then vision is produced. If that is the case, what about people who have damaged their, what is it?
Visual cortex. Visual cortex
at the back, whose sense power is, intact. So in this case, would you say that vision is not, how is not vision produced?
Good question.
Okay, good question. Diana, Taki Gong and Chuchi Sakira. Tanda Tonso Lesson and Leni, Nisat Leni. Tea Dishen is Jamni, Tanderi, Gapore, Sepore, Mabore, Tachichondi. Masun dishi yela ani dein dei magnajin chenge temba senare tu yero le kashitri tele sana ngarang tasir chena ani nambi tatakuna yushi ke samdale sa shazorta te onde wanshi ke wala ni par de tongso le shele tu goe ni ba yo mare sam ko nge samna te ni par de rewa tel ta goya me de sam ko rewa inzi wanshi ke wala ina ya wanshi ke se de ngaso wanshi ke le ya wanshi ke na tembe yele le ma to ke khang de ngaso nala mangi se de mambo sha yoro te gang le ya namra mambo shi yore ko buge ta ta ko le shan na ya ti ni shin de ma to ya mambo yore ode inzi inzi yishi dan rewa ta go mare de de ma ing na shin chen ke shi be yela ma le na ya
天个嘞南北到这些钱呢，王系正比一系了，我的一系的嘛，经过嘞王系来噻，因那在王系的王系有被直接搞过来兄弟，其实真把打到人头呢，当然王系的你都有啊，第一直接过来。
Okay. So he's saying that when the information is received at the visual cortex, right, we have already arrived at the perceptual level, which is a mental consciousness. So because of the damage, if the information is not received there, we are not able to form this perception, right? But still we can claim that vision has happened, the vision of blue has occurred. It's only that the person is not able to identify, or the person is not able to verbalize that, or the person is not able to form a memory of that perception, right? Of the vision, right? So the vision has happened, but the perception has not happened.
But if I can follow up on that, doesn't that mean then there's still a physical component of the brain that's partly constituting the vision that has to be part of that story? So.
So the Gyanlagi di Tiwadi Karsuri Despa Yakeva Inas, the Mixeke Sonra, the Javlo Kensho name Mixeke Sondu, the Mixeke de la Ani Levakit, Wachago Marves.
Atangaran tasarchino mixi level de tago medusam goshwa. Jense chick under this and nambi tatuk, one sheet get on the dung, and a yellow toba get on Shion de. And one sheet the Korange Yurk Wangi and the Jigures, you can number Koran shots and Tana Remato, Tilly Tig Gun, the Guinea Tig on Patuba Chetoma, they in the Mayinga, Chashipa Chetomare. Choosing the one sheet the Kubaris at the Nitania tire. The yellow gun leonde, that co paging towards and the Maze, that co Namshat Sama the Ichigani Chetoyer. What they on the Ichigani Cheva to Sola Kashishuna. So he
would say that vision is not dependent on the brain, right? So in the texts, the vision is described as something that occurs. Just like a mirror, when we place an object in front of a mirror, the reflection just arises. The mirror has no sort of perception of the reflection, right? So the vision is seen as that, right? A mere reflection, so to speak. And the vision is also described as dumb, that it has no ability to understand it, perceive, and so on. So when the brain gets involved, then we have moved to the perceptual level and hence to the mental consciousness.
Does that mean that the subtle consciousness is dumber in certain ways that when the brain gets involved? Because the brain is responsible for the dumbness. The brain not the act is responsible for the dumbness. Who gets the blame? What gets the blame?
Just a level at what may be up so any Kuba Lamna and Namshe Tamo the Kuba Chados rest. Level to Windows.
Tanga danda di Tiwa Tangshara. Tani Rukanga di Dada gets Rupunzo Labde Sambala Tandanganzo. Jushi di tola ni Lenga de Sambala, Nambe Tadubitonici, Serigitone. Niki Sundegitone. Again, Korangi Pason on the Sambala, Nambe Tadubitone, Tishikawara Shesra. So, in the Samatia and Patu the Sambala Tanda, Salu, Chodangi Gone Gingi, and a Karasan, Melon Munibatoji. Cochilogi, you Kandeji Shavina, and Melona Sagi Resin, and Cochisen and Sedoch. 다 샘샘베 따두 시자지나마 셰베 서로라 정 enggak karena ane wanshi di karena tinde kisum sobala tinde wanshi ki gere mitan ane kalsa nganzo namgi junde te tansa mitan zula tinde higi number sheba ki gere migi number sheba te ki gere lara ta tinde indi sambala sen zamba korangi tanda ane kalore chidin koran kelenge yo mara tanda mitan zula tinde higi number sheba ki gere sedi ko chidin mebe dubjela koran ane di chu lunga de sele de orta ti indi sambal tanda gare lana milam ginne kapsu chiyorwa milam ginne kapsu dilau koran lau ani migdan zula tene ani tindegi ani kaisana tema thake kin bola tinde ani kaisanga zonga milam ginne kapsu tinde langboje thongsong la jora ta tinde ani kalorda kewa meba de ani thadu mundes ta inji minji kin sum chogu ye na ra ani suji da ani tinde tema tesum namginne kapsenge langboje thong la dila tanda ngaja namginne uma baba ani semzamba chobase shira tadiga thugura tinda sama tela gin kharangi len kandi yes.
So his question is concerns the way the fifth group gave their presentation, right? So on the one hand, it appears that the way they are describing how the sensations are produced seems to be based on the mind-only school's view, but he also talked about this external sort of factor, right, objective factor, which according to mind-only school doesn't exist. So mind-only school is a kind of an idealist school. Yep. So isn't there a contradictory within your presentation, the way you presented it?
Oh, nasta ane choda pemsi rainbow dance payabo dance. Ina tez gig taki gani nge karishi sare sena wanshi chule kesum nge par changu res ishila nge par guma res keni denge yore sum denge yore se ati tanda mulam ta tara ting tikishiro ane ta senze mi kashi son senze mi kashi she kala senze mi le namji ge ane ko shetan karere muchen de la muchen takba shiwa ge muchen takba ti muchen re mendu tendero ti mayenge muchen yore senze go mare senze mi le ya o yone muchen na te la mugo mare se ge ti namsha ti yoro ti on de te le ya nenga mi des
ogen tochi tanda de gin putsola tanda de wa ani ko mukamam botela ani karanga sum mugde ja ma tola palande yo mar so ngi watela yena yang tongso la khla ani karajina ko chundo sho ani matsu yishi yello to kwaji yorwa o yello to kwatela chunjong gore ko tsamanda dani ji kan sora ta yello to kwatela chunjong go yo ina tendi karan tongso la kandi yello to kwati chin ko ron jo kharen jo ko mar chetang matsu ani kare yiji khiwatela gingo so ina pa chin sim murgo anda sungdo naranda sina ani kare yiji khiwatela yo 지금 고안다스 통소라 가레제 나가서 무친 더 친당 아니 가라 디마트 진 더친 데라요 주권 디마트 거 있는 기간에 대도 지도 가르잖아 아니 키워 안 좋다 지금 당 누안 좋다 지금 어 텐도 단다 가르잖아 이시티 그런 단다 그 통소라게 지원도 그런 거 덕적 원보 저니 때라 좀 풀어주는 디크린디 그 말스 그런 덕 이시지 와라 영한 되잖니
통솔레이션 디 아니 이시기 다긴을 샤
덕친 나잖니 때라 추르추라 선상 아니 이시 때라 추르추란 디크린디 그 말스
So his question is about the damage to the visual cortex. Usually in the text, the 5 sensations have these 3 factors that are necessary for them to be produced. But the mental consciousness need not have 3 factors, right? So if the damage to visual cortex is inhibiting, right, the perception from happening, right, inhibiting the mental consciousness that perceives the object from occurring, then can we identify this visual cortex as one of the factors for the perception? Oh, Lee?
단다 디레다 겐츠링 부정하니 슈데 디레다 지단 대화사에 고 망고 쉬고 지러와 지단도 나랑 속이 류기 연락 탐실로고 대화도 대화 요요 버려와 이나 디갑기 대화사에 대화 믹스 진지 샤고 얘기로 디 대화 등가서 단다 제기래 와 다이는 개인만이 가르치고 슬라와이나 페나로와 단다 나랑서 둘라 샤뉴 찍도와 샤뉴 딜라타베 미셰 찍게 발라 아니 개조도 숨 좀고도 라고 그런 건지 봐 샤뉴 데믹베 미셰 찍지 아니 델은 믹제기 율 샤뉴 코랑지 아니 믹제 율 샤뉴 디당 아니 미시디 깨वर 지긴기 규 아니 부모마이 베다겐다고 창고고 도스라고 그러다 딘데왜 개조 숨된지 창와라 인지 민지 야지기 난다 테릭 베시에 대해 기직 디왈 레베직 디왈 직 수르 두고도 와 인지 민지 고 마레스와 얘는 어디서 왔다 말았어 개인이 기타 저도 데려다 지금 대화 밀라고 말해 지금 나랑서 강발라고 하니 대화 이래 들어와 따이면 네가 대화 됐대서 갈서 그래 레바면은 야지 왕식이 자와 지에 맞도 봐 디네랑 많이 봐 레바면은 왕식 거랑 자와 지에 여바도 직당 레바 매바 있는 쌤기 자와 지에 여바지 샤고 부도 사이들다
So saying that we have to be careful about how we understand the word relate, right, or the relation, because there are many types of relationships, right. In one sense, all of our body parts are related to other body parts. So we are not talking about that kind of relationship, right. When we say that three factors are needed in order to produce sensations, it's a kind of a causal relationship that helps with the production of the sensation.
If I can at least one of my two favorites, and so what do we know about our visual system? Light impingement on the retina, there's this pattern of activation of cells. That's transmitted to a pathway running to the base of the brain and ends in this area right here, which is called the primary cortex. The pattern of activation of the primary visual cortex is a mirror of the activation on the retina. It's reversed. But the pattern of activation is effectively the same. That area is only about 3 or 5 neurons deep. From there, the signal is transferred in two more or less separate pathways. One is of the dorsal pathway, the other is the ventral pathway. The dorsal seems to have more to do with time and space. The ventral has more to do with identification of an object. Now, one of the reasons we know about this is that we've been able to study on people who have brain damage as a result of stroke, and stroke often affects different parts of the brain in different degrees. Now, if the visual pathways are cut off after V1, if that would be an unusual event, then they will really cut off, because often you just get a degrading of the pathway. Then you don't find blind sight. That is, blind sight is when a patient is able to say, I can't see anything, and you go, well, if you had to guess, where is the object? And they go, well, I had a guess. And they more often than not say where the object is, but they swear they don't see anything. If those pathways are really cut, totally degraded, there's no blind sight. If, on the other hand, there's some degree of activation there, then you can get blind sight, and you can get different kinds of blind sight depending on which pathway is degraded. And of course, for much vision, prepotentiation of some of these things as a result of frontal cortical areas may make for selective attention and retention. So there's a lot there, but what I think it shows is the dependency of visual consciousness in an exquisite and nuanced way on different aspects of the brain.
Ganagi del dichik shunde chongsons tanda ngazu ta thongsor mala la gorwa di gi ta gyurim dodi ta number zu kingre ro we ta chine karsor phage yune we yong ko thagi la pho ro thagi nang lo la ani chi tanda thabung yoro wangza thabung ani di phok wala te ne ani wangza thabung le la kuigurwa dinde ani Quran gi chawa chedan roji gi ani kebarche an dinde di ani dadi ngazo lebe gi da kharsure thiliosa dinene chine ani drone ta thongzo leshun la kharsur de di dugurwas dinde di la ta thongzo leshun rimba thangbo lagurwas primary ani visual cortex rimba thangbo di res and dinene rwa ani kharsure de nechu di rwa chatting laure datin di ani dolam masuna ni yores chike ting ne dola dosa chi da wone dosa chi ni yores ni chene ani ko kharsure ting di ani ngajo kharsure de khosada ani thuida du dewa yobache ani wodi ani chala di phage yudi ngongen zin da di dan dewa chagi yores rwa da 제가 통조로 말아 세운디 두주 상마 차기요 레스 로아 다디 낭로네 아니 코 차시 찍라 견쇼바 이나 로아 아니 파게 통조로 가지고 가서래 통조로 깨라 아니 슈겐테기요 로아스 다디 가지고 미 레타 데데게 로아 안디게 달 레바낭로라 탁자 되네 타튼 안 타튼 바딜라 텐네 고타 타튼서기 레베기 차시디 톨라두고라 디 톨라도네 니 첼레 냠네 라 첼레 냠바딜라 텐네 아니 카르소 통조 통아조 다 카르소레 믹셰스고르다 딜라 아니 슈겐 담다 테베요 레스 릭직라 콘조이 블라인드 사이트 라고다 아니 롱통스라고래 and longwegi thong de sh the dinalo la mi kangsa digi nga thonggumin doslani Quran labgi ores yimba ina ya za ta bet za dinini mi gi jablo ne za doe de bet dus che shayo na andinde bet longwa chane longwe thongsor de ke yuma res ina ya ko di labor thola kharsure ngajo dalam thola rodang gashila 와 아니 베 차시지 돌아줘야다 근데기 내다 나로라 아니 그 강사 고란기 땅아 지 통구민도 라기래데 이내 잘라지 때네 거와도 그냥 쳐바치다 슬라바이나 갸자 망아지 아니 콘서 딱딱 쳐바 제 두고요 레스 와다 누줄라다 농회 통소스나니 라고요 레스 와 딘데기 아니 내단디 와 아니 고자라 견쇼단기 개발기 와 아니 용구요 레스 제가 통조를 레이션스라니 때말에 가지고 통조를 말아 세운디 잠발라야 고 가르수레 고뇨부체 엔디나로 레베 차시 망부 아니 데데요 레스.
So just to put a sharper point on it, it seems to me that group 2 can explain blind sight, but group 5 can't explain blind sight. That would be my challenge to group 5.
제가 다칸즈 단다데 루가니기 담시 제바 시순세나 아니 루가 니버디기 아니 블라인드 사이트 컨테스 용기여바디 피제 데시 갸투사레스 아니 루가 나바기 더 블라인드 사이트 데시 갸투에 민도스
Tiwachi kainanda.
Tiwachi.
And the game Chidan and the Gabin Zogiro Ani Dishunza. Gabra Sundi Matachidan did again, and the Chuse Sundi and Donga Sundi, or Dinton Sunza again. The this one is about gain, and the chick Shiva Konan Dishjo and this by Shivati and Karsna Disumurata. You are Chibata, you Zimber Chibichan, that you are said it and the Gansundi is again, the Lung Tamada, the Shiva Shimba, you Lung Sejora. That you are Chibichan and Lung Da, you Zimber Chibi, Shiva City, that Kuning would imitate Sumora again. This one is but that you are Chibichan, Lung said it as James Anshaora. Then is Sujin de Anikare, 만들 숙제 주는 싸봐서 숙제는 시작을 왜 다양 될 넣어서 안 취지지 수로 딘데지를 가르치면 당을 어디 간다시오서.
So his question is about the way the group 5 described the connection between the consciousness and the subtle wind, and how it is understood. When you talk about this relationship between the two, right? You agree that the mind or the subtle mind is dependent upon some kind of energy, some kind of subtle particle. So how should we understand this particle? Is it something that has mass and so on, or is it there's another way of understanding
different
that?
Kind of particle?
Yeah.
Good question.
Ultimately, different kind of physics.
Yeah. yeah. I want to respond to that?
Okay. 저도 지난 세보시 다른 고마. 다 간단히 녜다기 시야에 가르치나 나그는 논세 참문이 막이 베트라이 타르티베 네발 밥송나 가르세 군잉오야메 땅칸데레세 데리 어딘데 셰테 제 가처리다 다더리아 고마셔 간단히 가르치나 논세 데 남징아 소게 네 직전가바 나싱게 사울로 당데나 용아메르다데 간터 코니 시바주 열라 교 아시난다타 카운터니 열라 파 카초그라 아시안도시리 카초에 콜레야 요에 칠리제 비차니 티 차들이야 카운터니 롱세 타니시타 요르다 테 코카 초아점 마임바 파쇼데 직 네인데 마인게스나 카운터 요슈츠니 징그레 아시아티 티 차니 시바세 티 차데 콜레야 칠리게 차니 요아르치 칸실라 티 카시티 쇼레 다데 남긴 가서 취지전체 베식다 다치 딘디까지 시엔도나 데스코 가르세오나 라빈 남샤시간 야레용거를 삼거링에 삼나 단단가서 직 딘도랑 살로 당하여나 쟁거다 컨터
So he's interpreting the particle nature of the consciousness as its ability to disengage and attend to another object, right? So if it's attending to one object, the ability of consciousness to disengage from that and re-engage in or engage in another object, right? So based on this ability to move or flit from one object to another, it has been described as the wind or motion. And the ability to grasp or function to grasp is, how we understand the consciousness.
단다기 가르스는나 딱답라 야촌라 조이나야 아니 온시게 게스음 상와인자 그냥 문제 미셔도 보지 게 투그레스 이나야 다 디오세게 니시디 쟁겨 말했으니 송송 근데 이제 딱답나 촌라 조치 롱아 차와세 롱아 차바 이나야 그 게스음데 상대요 딱답나 촌라 조에 깽기 미경불라 촌라 조냐세 딱답나 촌라 조에 깽기 롱아 차인데 केसुम छावाइन्जा ता ओंशेदि केस लाबगुरे लागु मारेसरो केसे ओंशे केगियोना को लमखाल ड्रोथुगुरे थुगु मारे लंगा जिनि मिक्सेदि के लागु छिगिरो वाता को लमखाल ड्रोथुगुरे थुगु मारेस ड्रोल थोइना शेनांकी गिरि कि मारेस